Hi friends. Now perhaps no world leader has ever taken as many U-turns as Donald Trump has. On 11th of June, Trump posted this tweet saying that the US tonight, meaning on the 12th, would hit Iran. Now according to Trump, Iran's navy, its air force, anti-aircraft systems and every type of defense has already been largely destroyed. And now on top of that, Trump says or rather threatens, we will hit Iran very hard tonight. So this was his threat. And not only that, but afterward, Donald Trump went on his news outlets and made this type of, joke, saying that, and I quote, that the situation with Iran is such that even if Iran came out waving a white flag, shouting, we surrender," and even if Iran declared that the USA has the strongest military in the world, his critics would still criticize him. Well, he's clearly confusing Iran with Pakistan. Pakistan would have usually surrendered by now. But Iran now clearly doesn't look ready to surrender at all, even now. But here, Trump is saying that hypothetically, even if Iran came out with a white flag, declared surrender, and acknowledged that the US military is the strongest in the world, he'd still hit it hard. So now, how did the market react to Donald Trump's threat? So Trump was making all these kinds of statements, saying, "I will destroy Iran. I will hit Iran very hard. Iran has only a few hours to accept this deal. Otherwise, I will bomb Iran today like the world has never seen it." So Trump said all of this, causing fear among the investors, and because of this fear, stock markets around the world started to fall down. Because look, no matter how much Trump's reputation has fallen, but at the end of the day, he is still the president of the United States. And when he says things like, "I'm going to launch a massive attack on Iran today," suddenly the world is on an edge. Suddenly, everyone starts anticipating what will happen next. Now let's come to the sudden U-turn. So Donald Trump made many statements in his warnings. He even said, at some point in the not too distant future, we'll be taking Kharg Island, that is Iran's Kharg Island, and he said they'd seize it. And after that, they'd take total control of Iran's oil and gas market, just like they did with Venezuela, which according to him is working brilliantly. Now, Trump said all of this. Usually, we have seen that Trump's earlier threats were different and mostly vague, like, I'll destroy the entire civilization, or I'll do this, I'll do that, etc. But here, the detail with which Trump was threatening made it seem like he really would launch a major attack. And what was the result? Well, the stock market started falling down, oil prices started rising, and then suddenly, guess what happens? When it was the night in India, a tweet from Trump came out saying that he had actually cancelled this attack. So here you can see, suddenly Trump tweets that he had a discussion with Iran and now Iran's highest leadership has approved of a deal. The final points have been largely approved by all the parties. But then he says that the naval blockade, under which the US is continuously hitting ships, sailors are being killed, the blockade placed on Iran will continue at full force until this deal is completely signed. But for now, he is pausing the attack. So US media reports that Trump has said that the USA has ended the war with Iran, but Iran has given no confirmation yet. Now this is very strange. Trump himself declares that tomorrow he'll launch a massive attack. Then a few hours later, after the market drops about 2 to 3%, he says, "Okay, I'm not attacking." And then the market suddenly rises again. And during all of this, Iran's official stance doesn't change even once. Not once does Iran say, "Yes, we are very close to a deal." So US media itself is reporting that Iran is saying something and the US president is saying something else. And now what the world needs is clarity. So now let's look at the pattern of Trump's behavior. Look, Trump keeps taking these U-turns. Let's agree that at one point there was an entertainment value to it. Like, look how the US president is flip-flopping. We used to say, Trump always chickens out. Trump always takes a U-turn. Trump gets scared, etc. That was fine for jokes and all. But now, the way Trump's administration is attacking the oil tankers using Hellfire missiles, killing sailors with this blockade on Iran, at some point, someone needs to talk to the US and ask, what is your strategy? Why are you doing so many flip flops? Why don't you just make a permanent ceasefire with Iran? And why don't the attacks on these oil tanker ships stop? So these are some very important questions that someone needs to ask the United States. And more importantly, where is the United Nations? And if you're asking, where is the United Nations in all of this? Well, it's been over 100 days now, and this war doesn't seem to be ending anywhere soon. So the question is, why isn't the UN doing anything? Why isn't this being discussed in the UN Security Council on how to end this war? And what has the UN said about the Indian sailors who have been killed? When a reporter asked the UN spokesperson why they aren't doing anything about the unarmed sailors being killed, well, the UN spokesperson said, yes, we know Indian sailors have died, and we condemn this. But they didn't mention the US or even take the US's name even once. They're saying that they support the condemnation of the attack. But again, the UN isn't taking any major action. There's no warning of sanctions, no mention of action if seafarers continue to be killed. And if any other country were doing this, I'd say by now there would have been talk of human rights, talk of sanctions, etc. But again, it's clearly what we say might is right, or jiski lathi uski bhais. Since the US provides major funding for the UN, no one can imagine the US being held accountable for these attacks on seafarers. Now, coming to Trump's latest claims. So, for now, Trump is saying a peace deal will be signed in Europe very, very soon. Earlier, this deal was supposed to be signed in Pakistan, but now the location has changed to Europe. Trump says that a deal will be signed in Europe. Now, he's saying that stock markets are up 1,000 points. Look, earlier the stock market fell after his declaration, and now, after he said that he is not attacking, it's rising again. But then he says he's talking to many world leaders. Then he comes to Pakistan. So again, he said the same thing he's been saying for months, that Pakistan is fantastic, Turkey is fantastic, and they're going to do some deal. Well, he's clearly saying all that because of his own interest, and he knows very well that he needs Pakistan's support to negotiate with Iran. Else, it will be really, really difficult for him. But from Iran's side, the statement has come saying, we don't know what Trump is saying. And unfortunately, the UN still can't do anything about this issue. So then what's the future and the United Nations role? Perhaps when this conflict does eventually end in the long run, because it doesn't look like it will end very soon, but eventually, whenever it does, we'll have to look at the UN's role and ask, why can't the UN step in and stop any conflict today? So whether it's the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the US-Iran conflict, even Operation Sindoor, which is India's operation, wherein India decided to pause its operation on its own. There was no UN intervention. Even in the Armenia-Azerbaijan issue, the UN needs a complete overhaul. Only then we can establish peace in the world and stop these kinds of conflicts. Otherwise, today the US is entangled with Iran. Tomorrow they might start attacking, I don't know, Cuba. So far, there's no indication that Iran is going to, sign any peace deal. But again, if any update comes, then I'll make an updated video for you all. Thank you.